They called her delicate, mocked her ballet-like movements and soft landings. Too graceful for combat, they said, relegating her to perimeter duty while real soldiers handled the fighting. But they never looked closely enough to see what those graceful hands were capable of. They never wondered why her patrol routes always coincided with enemy disappearances. Until today. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate stories about underestimated heroes who silently change the world, consider subscribing to hear more untold tales of extraordinary people. The pale dawn light filtered through dust motes as Elena Riley moved through the obstacle course. Where other soldiers grunted and powered their way across barriers, her movements were different, fluid, precise, economical. She vaulted over a wall with a grace that seemed out of place amid the mud and barbed wire of Fort Richardson's training grounds. From his observation platform, Commander Brooks watched with a frown deepening the lines around his mouth. He made notes on his tablet as Elena completed the course 30 seconds ahead of her closest competitor, yet somehow managing to look as though she'd barely exerted herself. "Still moving like a damn ballerina," he muttered to Captain Richards beside him. Richards nodded. "Technical scores off the charts, but combat effectiveness?" He made a wavering gesture with his hand. "You can't pirouette your way through a firefight." In the locker room afterward, Elena kept to herself, changing quickly as conversations flowed around her. She'd learned to tune out the comments, but today they seemed louder. "Did you see Riley on the course?" Staff Sergeant Mercer's voice carried. "Looked like she was auditioning for Swan Lake." Laughter rippled through the room. "I heard Brooks is keeping her on perimeter patrol again," another voice added. "Smart move, too pretty for the real stuff." Elena closed her locker with a soft click and walked out, her footsteps nearly silent on the concrete floor. No one noticed her leave. 20 minutes later, she sat across from Commander Brooks in his office, back straight, expression neutral as he reviewed her file on a holographic display hovering above his desk. "Your technical scores are exceptional, Riley," he said without looking up. "Response time, accuracy, efficiency, all excellent." "Thank you, sir." He finally met her eyes. "But I remain concerned about your combat readiness. This isn't a dance studio. Real combat is messy, aggressive, unpredictable. Your movements are too choreographed." Elena maintained her composure. "With respect, sir, I've completed all qualifying exercises with top marks." "On paper, yes." Brooks leaned forward. "But there's more to combat readiness than metrics. There's instinct, aggression." He tapped her file. "You're technically proficient, Riley. That earns you a place here. But until I see you demonstrate the necessary killer instinct, you'll continue with perimeter patrol duty." "Understood, sir." Her voice revealed nothing of her thoughts. "Dismissed." She rose smoothly and exited the office, her movements so fluid that Brooks found himself watching her go with a mixture of admiration and frustration. Something about Riley had always seemed off to him, though he couldn't place exactly what it was. Perhaps it was simply that she moved like no soldier he'd ever trained, too precise, too controlled. Combat was chaos, and he couldn't imagine her graceful movements surviving first contact with the enemy. The assignment board confirmed what Brooks had already told her. While the rest of her squad was listed for a tactical extraction exercise, valuable combat training, Elena was assigned to routine perimeter patrol for the 5th week running. "Bad luck again?" Tech specialist Damon appeared beside her, his lanky frame leaning against the wall as he studied the assignments. Elena shrugged. "Apparently I'm still too graceful to handle the rough stuff." Damon rolled his eyes. "Their loss. For what it's worth, I'd rather have someone who knows where their feet are in a firefight than half these bulls who trip over their own bootlaces." She allowed herself a small smile. Damon had been the only one to treat her normally since basic training. He appreciated precision, perhaps because his own work with the base's technology systems required it. "Maybe next time," she said, though they both knew there was little chance of that. "Want to grab dinner later? I'm upgrading the motion sensors on the east quadrant, but I'll be free by 7. "I'll try," Elena said. "I've got patrol until 8, but maybe after." Her personal device vibrated in her pocket as they parted ways. Elena waited until she was alone in a corridor before checking it. The message contained only a series of numbers, coordinates, a timestamp, and an authorization code. Nothing else. Her expression didn't change as she memorized the information and deleted the message. That night, as the base settled into its evening rhythm, Elena lay in her bunk, listening to the steady breathing of the other women in her quarters. At precisely 23:40, she silently slipped from beneath her covers, already dressed in base-issued exercise gear. No one stirred as she ghosted across the floor and out the door. The night air was cool against her skin as she made her way across the compound, avoiding the standard patrol routes with practiced ease. She reached an unmarked door set into the side of what most personnel believed was a storage facility. The keypad glowed faintly as she entered a 16-digit code, different from the one she'd received earlier. The door slid open with barely a whisper. Inside, the apparent storage facility revealed itself to be something else entirely. Clinical white lighting illuminated a sophisticated training room equipped with technology that wouldn't be available to standard forces for another decade. A tall, silver-haired woman in civilian clothes waited inside, her posture impeccable. "You're 3 seconds early, Operative Riley," the woman said, her tone neutral. "The mission parameters have been uploaded. You have 20 minutes for review before physical conditioning." Elena nodded, moving toward a secure terminal. "Any complications from today's observations, Director Voss?" "Nothing concerning. Commander Brooks remains convinced of your unsuitability for combat operations. Captain Richards continues to reinforce this assessment among the troops." Director Voss's mouth curved in a slight smile. "Your cover remains intact." The terminal activated at Elena's touch, displaying detailed schematics of a facility located deep in territory controlled by forces hostile to American interests. As she studied the layout, her posture subtly shifted, the carefully maintained appearance of hesitancy and softness falling away, revealing the coiled precision of a predator. "Extraction target?" Elena asked, her voice now crisper, more authoritative than anything her squad members would recognize. "Dr. Farid Nazari, nuclear physicist, taken against his will 3 days ago. Intelligence suggests they're moving him to a more secure location in 48 hours. After that, retrieval chances drop below acceptable parameters." Elena absorbed this, her eyes never leaving the schematics. Defense systems? Standard perimeter guards, electronic surveillance, anti-aircraft measures. The facility data is 2 years old. Expect upgrades. Director Voss moved to stand beside her. "This is a Priority 1 operation, Riley. Nazari's knowledge of compact fusion technology cannot fall into their hands." "Understood. Solo insertion?" "Yes. The usual cover, routine patrol duty coinciding with necessary absence. Brooks never checks those logs personally." Voss studied her carefully. "Are you experiencing any operational strain from the dual role?" Elena finally looked up from the terminal. "No, the disconnect works in my favor. They see what they expect to see. A woman too graceful, too soft for real combat. It makes me effectively invisible." "Good. The Phantom Ballet program selected you precisely because of that capability, to move between perceptions, to be overlooked." Director Voss handed her a physical file folder, an unusual precaution that indicated the classified nature of its contents. "Review this as well. It contains updated intelligence on the facility's new security chief, former Spetsnaz, enhanced." Elena took the folder. "Extraction parameters? Preferably alive, but Nazari's knowledge is the priority. Ensure it doesn't reach enemy intelligence analysts, whatever the cost." Voss checked her watch. "Your window for return is 400. Any later, and you'll miss morning muster." As Elena immersed herself in the mission details, her movements took on an even greater precision. The grace her fellow soldiers mocked revealed for what it truly was, the lethal economy of motion that made her the perfect operative for missions no one could know existed. The operation would launch tomorrow night, under the cover of her supposedly mundane patrol duty. While her squad mates continued believing she was too delicate for real combat, she would be halfway across the world, moving through enemy territory with the same silent grace they ridiculed. The irony wasn't lost on her, but Elena took no pleasure in the deception. It was simply necessary, both for the mission and for maintaining her cover as the soldier too graceful for war. The morning sun beat down on the supply convoy as it rolled through what military intelligence had designated a low-risk corridor. 3 armored vehicles led the way, followed by 4 transport trucks carrying food, medicine, and ammunition to forward operating base Kessler. Elena sat in the rear vehicle, her rifle resting across her lap as she scanned the rocky terrain. "Another thrilling patrol for Riley," Staff Sergeant Mercer called from the driver's seat, his voice carrying a hint of mockery. "Try not to pirouette off the turret if we hit a bump." The others laughed, but Elena kept her attention on their surroundings. Something felt wrong. The road ahead curved around a steep hillside, creating a natural choke point that would be perfect for an ambush. She'd memorized the route the night before, after completing her actual mission. The extraction of Dr. Nazari had gone flawlessly, the physicist now safely in friendly territory while she returned to maintain her cover. "Approaching the bend," she said calmly. "Perhaps we should establish overwatch before proceeding." Mercer snorted. "Thanks for the tactical advice, Ballerina. Intel says this area has been clear for weeks. We've got a schedule to keep." Elena pressed her lips together, saying nothing more. She continued scanning the ridgeline, noting subtle disturbances in the dust patterns that suggested recent movement. As they rounded the bend, she tensed, hands tightening imperceptibly on her weapon. The first explosion hit the lead vehicle, flipping it onto its side in a plume of smoke and debris. The second struck moments later, disabling the final transport truck. Gunfire erupted from concealed positions along the ridgeline. "Ambush! Take cover!" The squad leader's voice crackled over the radio before dissolving into static as communications were jammed by sophisticated electronic warfare equipment. Elena moved instantly, her training taking over. While the others scrambled in panic, she was already calculating angles, identifying hostile positions, establishing priorities. This was no ordinary insurgent attack. The precision, the equipment, the timing all suggested a well-trained enemy force. "Riley, get your head down," Mercer shouted as bullets pinged off the vehicle's armor. She complied, but not before noting at least 12 hostiles in hardened positions above them. The squad leader, Lieutenant Dawson, was already down, clutching a bloody arm as he tried to organize their defense. The convoy was effectively trapped. "Campbell, Jenkins, suppress that northern position," Dawson ordered through gritted teeth. "Mercer, coordinate with the second vehicle for covering fire. We need to get the wounded to shelter behind those rocks." Elena waited for her assignment, but none came. Even now, in the midst of genuine combat, she was an afterthought. It would work to her advantage. As the firefight intensified, Elena slipped away from the main group during a particularly heavy exchange. No one noticed her absence as she moved silently between boulders, using the terrain for cover. Her movements were fluid, practiced, nothing like the hesitant soldier her unit believed her to be. She circled behind a cluster of rocks where two enemy combatants had established a firing position overlooking the convoy. Their attention was fully fixed on the American forces below. Neither heard Elena's approach. One moment they were firing confidently, the next they lay unconscious, neutralized with precision strikes that made barely a sound. Elena appropriated their radio, listening briefly to confirm her suspicions. This was a coordinated attack by well-trained operators speaking in coded Russian, not the local insurgents they were supposedly facing in this region. She disabled the radio jammer they'd been using, instantly restoring the convoy's communications capability. As she moved to the next position, Elena spotted a third enemy soldier preparing to launch a shoulder-fired missile at the remaining operational transport. With impossible speed, she closed the distance and redirected his aim just as he fired, sending the missile harmlessly into the hillside. The man spun around, shock registering on his face at her sudden appearance. He recovered quickly, swinging his weapon toward her. Elena moved with liquid grace, flowing past his guard and rendering him unconscious with precise pressure point strikes. To anyone watching from a distance, the encounter would have appeared almost like a brief dance rather than combat. She continued methodically eliminating hostiles on the northern ridge while her squad remained pinned down below, unaware of her actions. When Campbell looked up during a lull in fire, he could have sworn he saw a figure moving with uncanny speed along the ridgeline, but in the chaos of battle, he dismissed it as a trick of light and adrenaline. 20 minutes later, the attacking force mysteriously began to falter. The coordinated fire became erratic, then ceased altogether from the northern positions. The surviving hostiles retreated, leaving the convoy battered but intact. "They're pulling back," Jenkins called out in disbelief. Mercer was already organizing a defensive perimeter, expecting a second wave that never came. As the dust settled, Elena reappeared at the convoy, slipping back into her position as though she'd never left. "Riley, where the hell were you?" Mercer demanded, his face flushed with battle and anger. "Taking cover, as ordered, sir," she replied evenly, her uniform showing minimal dirt despite the chaos around them. Campbell looked at her curiously. "Did you see anyone up on that north ridge? I could have sworn I saw movement up there." Elena shook her head. "No, sir. Just focused on keeping my head down." Later, as medical evacuation helicopters arrived and military intelligence officers began their preliminary investigation, Elena stood apart from the group. She noticed two officers in unmarked uniforms watching her with particular interest. They knew. This ambush wasn't random. It was far too sophisticated for the region. Someone had tracked Dr. Nazari's extraction and arranged this attack to eliminate whoever had conducted the operation. Her cover might be compromised. Back at base, the debriefings lasted hours. Each squad member was interviewed separately, recounting their actions during the ambush. When Elena's turn came, the intelligence officers seemed unusually focused on her account. "And you remained in cover behind the disabled third vehicle throughout the engagement, Specialist Riley?" The lead officer's tone was neutral, but his eyes were sharp. "Yes, sir, as ordered by Staff Sergeant Mercer." "Interesting." He shuffled through some papers. "We have some inconsistencies in the timeline. There's approximately 18 minutes where your whereabouts cannot be accounted for by any other squad member." Elena maintained her composure. "It was chaotic, sir. Everyone was focused on the threat." "Indeed." The officer studied her for a long moment. "You're dismissed, Specialist. For now." In the mess hall that evening, Elena could feel the shift in atmosphere. The usual mockery had transformed into something else. Suspicion. "Did you notice Riley during the firefight?" Jenkins asked Campbell quietly. "I never saw her fire a single shot." Campbell frowned. "Strange thing is, those hostiles on the North Ridge just stopped firing, like they vanished." "Maybe they ran out of ammo," Mercer suggested, but his usual certainty was missing. "Or maybe someone took them out," Jenkins said, eyeing Elena across the room. Captain Richards observed the conversation from nearby, his own suspicions growing. Later, he approached Commander Brooks with his concerns. "Something doesn't add up about Riley's account," he said as they walked toward the command bunker. "She claims she stayed in cover the entire time, but Campbell swears he saw movement on that ridge, and the enemy positions there were neutralized somehow." Brooks frowned. "Are you suggesting Riley abandoned her position during an active firefight?" "I'm suggesting she might have done more than just cower behind a vehicle." Their conversation halted as they entered the command bunker, where General Mitchell was reviewing footage from the ambush site. His expression was grim as he gestured them over. "Gentlemen, we have a situation." He played a segment of security camera footage recovered from one of the convoy vehicles. The quality was poor, but it clearly showed Elena moving with startling speed during moments when her helmet cam had mysteriously malfunctioned. "This doesn't match any account given during debriefing." Brooks stared at the footage in disbelief. "That can't be Riley. The movement patterns, the speed, it's nothing like her training performances." General Mitchell's expression remained stern as he pulled up another file on his secure terminal. An encrypted document appeared requiring his highest level clearance to access. As the file opened, a classified roster appeared with the code name Phantom Ballet at the top. Elena Riley's name was prominently listed, along with operational details that made both officers' eyes widen. "Sir, what is this?" Brooks asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That," Mitchell said gravely, "is the real reason Specialist Riley is on this base. And if I'm reading these satellite feeds correctly, she's already airborne again." "Airborne? But she's scheduled for routine patrol duty tomorrow." Mitchell's laugh was without humor. "Commander, when was the last time you personally checked those patrol logs?" The question hung in the air as the implications became clear. The woman they had dismissed as too graceful for war was something else entirely, and she was now headed toward what satellite imagery revealed to be a nuclear threat that none of them had been cleared to know existed. The classified briefing room was silent except for the hum of advanced technology as the footage played on the wall-sized screen. General Mitchell, Commander Brooks, and Captain Richards watched with expressions ranging from disbelief to dawning comprehension. On screen, Elena Riley moved through a training facility unlike anything at Fort Richardson. Her movements, so often mocked as too balletic for combat, were now revealed in their true context. She flowed between combat dummies with lethal precision, each strike precisely calculated for maximum efficiency with minimum effort. Where soldiers were trained to power through, Elena slipped between. Where others announced their presence with sound and fury, she existed in the spaces between perception. "What am I seeing, General?" Brooks finally asked, his voice hollow. Mitchell paused the footage. "Phantom Ballet, ultra-classified program initiated 8 years ago. The premise was simple but revolutionary. What if we stopped training soldiers to be noticed and started training them to exploit the blind spots in human awareness?" "She was never military to begin with, was she?" Richard said slowly. Mitchell shook his head. "Former elite ballerina, recruited at 19 directly from the New York Ballet Academy. The program theorized that dancers already understand something soldiers have to unlearn, how to move through space with deliberate control." He resumed the playback. Now Elena was shown neutralizing multiple opponents in a simulated urban environment. What appeared to be grace in a training exercise was revealed as something far more strategic. Each movement calculated to fall precisely where human attention was least likely to track. "The average human brain filters out an astonishing amount of visual information," Mitchell explained. "We conducted studies proving that in chaotic environments like combat zones, this filtering becomes even more pronounced. Phantom Ballet operatives are trained to move within those cognitive blind spots." Brooks stared at the screen, remembering all the times he'd dismissed Elena as too delicate for real combat. "So her assignment to my base, the patrols, the apparent inability to demonstrate aggression?" "All cover," Mitchell confirmed. "We needed somewhere to place her between missions where her unique movement patterns would be attributed to weakness rather than specialized training." "And the real missions?" Richards asked. Mitchell pressed a button, bringing up a global map with pinpoints indicating operations. Hostage extractions, high-value target eliminations, advanced technology recovery. When conventional operations would create diplomatic incidents or casualties, we send in a phantom. Another video played, this one grainy footage from what appeared to be a foreign military installation. A guard patrol moved through frame, and just at the edge of the image, a shadow shifted in a way that seemed almost like a camera glitch. Moments later, the patrol inexplicably collapsed. "This was North Korea 2 years ago," Mitchell said. "A nuclear scientist defector needed extraction. 40 guards, electronic surveillance, dog patrols." Riley walked in, retrieved the package, and left without firing a single shot. Not one alarm triggered. Brooks sank into a chair. "All this time I've been telling her she doesn't have what it takes for combat." "Which was exactly what we needed everyone to believe," Mitchell replied without sympathy. "Her cover depends on being underestimated." "Where is she now?" Richards asked. Mitchell brought up a satellite feed showing a coordinate somewhere in Eastern Europe. "That's classified beyond your clearance, but I can tell you it involves a missing tactical nuclear device that we believe has been acquired by a terrorist organization with state backing." "And she's operating solo?" Brooks couldn't hide his concern. "Phantoms always do. Partners create cognitive anchors that make them more visible." A junior officer burst into the room, his face pale. "Sir, we've got incoming transmission from Pianist Priority Alpha." Mitchell's expression tightened at the code name. "Put it through." The screens flickered, then displayed a secure video link. Director Voss appeared, her silver hair pulled back severely. "General, we have complications. Dancer's position has been compromised. We believe there's a leak." "Can we extract?" "Negative. She's already engaged and communications are minimal, but there's something else." Voss paused. "The facility has transport capacity we didn't account for. They're attempting to move the package tonight." Mitchell swore under his breath. "If that device reaches its destination, minimum casualties in the hundreds of thousands." Voss's expression remained professional, but her eyes betrayed concern. "Riley is good, but this operation has evolved beyond solo parameters." Mitchell turned to Brooks and Richards. "Gentlemen, I'm about to violate about 15 security protocols, but we're out of options. I need your squad ready for emergency deployment in 30 minutes. "My squad?" Richards asked in confusion. "They've worked with Riley, even if they don't know her real capabilities. That gives them a marginal advantage over a team that's never seen her operate." Voss interrupted from the screen. "General, that violates Phantom protocols. These men aren't cleared. Neither is a nuclear detonation in a European capital," Mitchell snapped back. "We adapt or we fail." Within 20 minutes, Mercer, Campbell, Jenkins, and the rest of Elena's squad were assembled in a secure briefing room, confusion evident on their faces as General Mitchell addressed them. "What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels," he began without preamble. "Your squad mate, Specialist Riley, is not who you think she is. She's an operative in an ultra-classified program, and she's currently behind enemy lines attempting to secure a nuclear device. Her mission has been compromised, and you're being deployed as emergency support." The room erupted in disbelieving questions until Brooks silenced them with a sharp command. "This isn't a joke or a drill," Mitchell continued. "You've all mocked Riley for her movement style, her apparent lack of aggression. What you're about to see will change that perspective permanently." He played a brief compilation of Elena's actual combat footage. The squad watched in stunned silence as the woman they'd dismissed systematically dismantled enemy forces with lethal efficiency, moving in ways that seemed to defy normal human limitations. "This is real?" Mercer finally asked, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Very," Mitchell confirmed. "And right now, she's alone in hostile territory facing odds that even she can't overcome without support." In the operations center 30 minutes later, the squad watched live drone footage as they prepared for deployment. The feed showed a sprawling industrial complex with heavy security. Somewhere inside that facility was Elena and a nuclear device that could devastate a major city. "Insertion point is here," Mitchell indicated on a tactical display. "Your objective is simple. Create a diversion that allows Riley to complete her primary mission. Do not attempt to link up unless she initiates contact." "How will we recognize her, sir?" Campbell asked. "I mean, if she's not really the Riley we know?" Mitchell's expression was grim. "Trust me, you'll know." The transport plane carrying Elena's squad arrived in Eastern European airspace 3 hours later. As they prepared to parachute into the operation zone, Richards briefed them one final time. "Remember, we're the diversion. Draw attention, create chaos, but stay alive. Riley is the primary operator, not us." As they descended toward the facility, explosions suddenly bloomed along the eastern perimeter. Someone had already begun creating chaos from within. On the ground, the squad moved through the confusion, engaging enemy forces as they pushed toward the main complex. Their training took over, but each of them found themselves constantly looking for glimpses of their former squad mate, wondering how they could have missed what she truly was. Campbell was the first to see her. Pinned down by enemy fire behind a concrete barrier, he glimpsed movement so fluid it momentarily registered as a camera glitch rather than a person. Then Elena was there, moving through the firefight like water flowing between rocks, untouched by the chaos around her. 3 guards fell before they seemed to register her presence. A fourth turned, weapon raised, but she was already gone, slipping into his blind spot with a precision that made her previous movements at base seem clumsy by comparison. "Target building ahead," Mercer's voice crackled over the radio. "Heavy resistance." Richards coordinated their approach, but as they prepared to breach, the doors burst open. A group of hostiles emerged, escorting a reinforced container that could only be the nuclear device. At their center was a tall man with cold eyes and military bearing, the security chief mentioned in Elena's briefing. The squad opened fire, forcing the hostiles to scatter and take cover. The security chief barked orders, directing his men to protect the container at all costs. In the chaos, Elena appeared, materializing from shadows where no cover seemed to exist. She moved directly toward the container, eliminating obstacles with an economy of motion that seemed impossible. The security chief spotted her, and his eyes widened in recognition. "The dancer," he snarled in accented English, drawing a specialized weapon. "Not this time." What followed was unlike anything the squad had ever witnessed in combat. Elena and the security chief engaged in what could only be described as lethal choreography, each movement precise and calculated. But where the chief's style was brutal and direct, Elena's was elusive, always in motion, always where his attention wasn't. "She's creating an opening," Richards realized suddenly. "Cover her." The squad intensified their fire, forcing the remaining hostiles to focus on them rather than Elena. In that moment of divided attention, she slipped past the security chief's guard and executed a precise strike. He collapsed, eyes wide with disbelief. Elena reached the container, quickly examining its security systems. Her fingers moved over a keypad with practiced precision as she disarmed the trigger mechanisms. "Package secure," she stated calmly into her communication device, the first words many of her squad had heard her speak with genuine authority. "Requesting extraction." Back at Fort Richardson 2 days later, Elena's squad gathered in the mess hall, still processing everything they had witnessed. The official story was that they had participated in a classified training exercise, but they knew the truth. They'd seen Riley, the real Riley, in action. The room fell silent as Elena entered, moving with the same fluid grace that had once been the subject of their mockery. Now they recognized it for what it was, the physical manifestation of exceptional training and natural talent. Captain Richards approached her, coming to attention before offering a formal salute that acknowledged what could never be publicly stated. "Specialist Riley." "Captain," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "We all do." Elena studied him for a moment. "No need, sir. Underestimation was always the point. It's what makes the program effective." "Well, I'll never make that mistake again." He gestured to an empty seat at their table. "Would you join us? Unless you have another patrol to attend to." The words carried new meaning now. A small smile touched Elena's lips. "Not today, Captain." As she sat with the squad that had once dismissed her, Elena maintained her cover identity, the quiet, graceful soldier who moved like a dancer, not a killer. But now they understood the truth behind what they saw, that her grace was never weakness, but precision, never delicacy, but deadly efficiency. "They thought I moved like a dancer, not a killer," she explained later to Damon, the one person who had always appreciated her precision. "They didn't understand that the best dancers make the deadliest soldiers."